South Africa's long march away from economic freedom continues to drop in 2023. This is according to the Economic Freedom of the World Index Survey. South Africa has slid into the 94th out of 165 nations, down one spot from 93rd last year. As a result, the country stays in the third of four quartiles of economic freedom. The report is published by the Fraser Institute in Canada each year. The Free Market Foundation, a Fraser Institute's partner in South Africa. This is a significant drop from South Africa's highest ranking on the index, which was attained in 2000, when it placed 47th amidst largely business and growth-friendly reforms of the former presidents Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki's administration. Now, since then, the country has consistently declined on the ratings as the government has introduced more and more misguided policies. Now, Martin van Staden, head of policy at the Free Market, joins us from Johannesburg to make sense out of this particular development. Thank you so much for your time, Martin.
Having me.
All right. Now, what are the main factors that led to the drop in South Africa's economic freedom in the latest World Annual Report?
So South Africa came into this year's report already in a bad place. So one of the very good uses of the index is that it shows the trend rather than the absolute rank at the moment. So where we are going rather than where we are. As you mentioned, we're practically in the same place as we were last year. We're very slight declines in the efficiency of how contracts are enforced by our courts. Inflation is worse. I think this is a global phenomenon. But South Africa's tariffs, our trade internationally, has also become more restrictive. And there have also been a few negligible improvements. But because South Africa has chronically failed to adopt a market-friendly public policy posture, we are just progressively moving further down this index every year.
Now, can you, of course, discuss any specific policies or reforms implemented in South Africa that have contributed to this decline in economic freedom?
Yes. Yeah. So of the 45 subcomponents that the Fraser Institute measures, some of South Africa's most poor scores are on things like government consumption. So the sheer amount of money that government spends primarily on its huge workforce, on public sector wages. We have high tax rates as well, very high. Our police and criminal justice system is very unreliable, and the impact of crime on business is notable, and that's also somewhere where we rank very poorly. We have a very strict capital control, so bringing money into South Africa and then also taking it out is very difficult from a policy and a legal perspective. South Africa's sovereign debt has increased significantly over many years. It's now projected at some 72.3% of national GDP. We have very inflexible wage determination. So government and trade unions impose wages on the market rather than employers and employees negotiating these wages in a free market setting. And then also another thing is that it's very difficult in South Africa to hire foreign labor. And that's something that the government regulation has made difficult. So it's our poor performance here that leads, and in other places, that leads to our decline in economic freedom and the resulting economic stagnation that we see today.
All right, now, how does this drop in economic freedom affect the overall economic growth and investment climate in South Africa?
Yeah, so you have to approach these things holistically. So even if you disagree with the premise or the measures that the Fraser Institute employs for the index, you cannot deny that the countries that rank higher in the index tend to attract both foreign and domestic investment. And countries that rank low, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, Chad, Sudan, these countries do not attract virtually any foreign investment or really domestic investment. So a drop on the index does represent a drop in investment attractiveness. And in South Africa, I would wager that the big reasons for this is the very rigid labor law environment and the inability of people to move their money around. as they please. But when you look, and that's specifically for foreign investment. But if you look at domestic investment and capital formation, it's very likely our high tax burden and which funds our government's reckless spending and borrowing habits, which in turn drive down economic growth.
All right, and of course, just a follow-up to that, are there any particular sectors or industries in South Africa that have been more adversely affected by the decline in economic freedom?
Yes, so historically, mining has been the big example there. So we ranked very highly in the year 2000, and in 2002, private property rights in minerals were completely abolished. So mining's contribution to national GDP here fell to only 6.6% in 2017, compared to a grand 19.4% in 1980. But today, any labor-intensive industry like agriculture or manufacturing is very adversely affected. If you look at our service and tech industry, you would see that that does relatively well compared to the rest of the continent because it is not as labor-intensive. But even then, that sector's growth is hindered by such things as our high tax burden, and indirectly by things like the sheer inefficiency of government bureaucracy and the compliance burdens that are set across the board.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Martin.